put him in a police car and said, well, we'll take him to the Krishnas. So I went back to sleep after this commotion outside, and I just forgot about it. And then I went down to the temple about 7 o'clock in the morning, and a police car pulled up outside. And I thought, uh-oh, they're coming to cause trouble, or we did something wrong. They're going to arrest someone. And they just threw this wallet they just stood at the doorway and threw this wallet in and said, Mike, here's your wallet. And there was this guy called Mike. And later on I found out that Mike was the very person who had been screaming Krishna outside the temple at 2 o'clock in the morning. And what had happened, I found out later, was that he went inside and the devotees started chanting with him and calmed him down and got him to regain his sanity that way.
Why were so many people turning to LSD at that time?
Well, the reason so many people were turning to LSD, I think, was part of the notion that LSD should be legalized. And it was about the time, I don't remember exactly the history of it, but LSD was in the process of being made illegal because people were using it as a recreational drug.
And was it something people were using under the impression that it would, lead to enlightenment or higher consciousness?
A lot of people thought that taking drugs like LSD would lead to enlightenment. They even thought smoking marijuana would lead to enlightenment. Like, people had a very strange and maybe perverted idea of what spiritual meant, the word spiritual. And some thought it meant free sex, some thought it meant tripping out on LSD. There are all kinds of misconceptions about what spiritual life was like. So, but a lot of people that were taking drugs thought that they were having some kind of mystical visitations.
And what was the Swami's message to you when you came to him?
He didn't say anything to me because I wasn't involved in that culture so much, but there was one time when I was in his room, a person who had been taking LSD and thought LSD was the way forward was speaking with the Swami, and the Swami said to him, he said, so that you can get the same feeling without taking LSD? And he kind of reluctantly agreed, and then the Swami said, so? And then this person later on became a devotee.
So the Swami's message was, you don't need all that to... In
New York, a pamphlet was issued called Stay High Forever, and it had a lot of the drug culture language in it. And it was about how you could get high if you chanted without taking any artificial stimulants.
So I wanted to move on and ask you about 26 Second Avenue, and could you describe finding the 26 Second Avenue storefront? Well,
what happened with 26 Second Avenue was that the Bowery had become, almost intolerable for the Swami. I mean, his roommate was the person who was intolerable, and he mentioned this to me one time. So I thought, well, I have to do something. I felt that I had to do something to help him. So I went out and got a newspaper called The Village Voice. It was the local sort of alternative newspaper, and I found out where it first hit the newsstands, and I went into a phone booth and made a telephone call, and 26 Second Avenue was for rent. That's how I found it. I found it in the columns of that newspaper.
And could you describe the motley sort of assortment of people that started to come to that? You mentioned motley assortment of people that started to come in your book, I believe. You described them like that. Why you didn't feel like you fitted in with that crowd you were mentioning?
Most of the people that came initially to 26 Second Avenue were young seekers, or kind of like drug culture people. They were people mainly of the same age, and they all looked kind of different. They were men and women, and so if an older or an icon type of person appeared among them, that was a plus. That's where Allen Ginsberg came one day. Allen Ginsberg was kind of an icon of the pop hip culture, so called.
What was the philosophy that he espoused?
Allen Ginsberg's philosophy was turn on and drop out. Tune in, turn on, drop out was the mantra. Tune in, turn on, and drop out. That Timothy Leary coined, and then it was picked up throughout New York and San Francisco among the younger generation. cooperation.
It was interesting. I was speaking with Mahatma Prabhu in an interview just last week, and he made this comment that, like, today when people are very successful, they're entrepreneurs or they're head of big corporations. That's what people think of as success, or very intelligent, high-class people doing amazing things in the world. But he mentioned that back in the 60s and 70s, if you were on the outskirts, if you dropped out, there were intelligent people, seekers. They were doing amazing things. But looking back today, we'd think, oh, they just dropped out. Do you have any comment on how it's a different different way of looking back at that time and the people who were there?